Hey everyone. So, this week's episode, I wanted to talk to you about the relationship around praising. It so happened I came across an article in the Washington Post on how the Chinese culture is embracing the praise culture from the States. And the Washington Post was quite surprised by it, and I was as well, given the geopolitical tensions. You would have never guessed about this. But then when I stood back and I thought about it, it also did not surprise me. I guess maybe being from a South Asian community where we are not very easy to praise or support one another, where we can be very hard on each other because we think that comes from a space of love. And so praise is very difficult to have an acceptance with. So while that got me thinking about, my own relationship with praise, I step back and I had a conversation with a client, a prospective client, a few days ago, and we were talking about how the diversity and inclusion space is now still undergoing much struggle because the economical situation in the world, the hiring situation is not so much. So more and more they're looking towards elevating the sense of belonging in a corporate space. Now, if you're like me, you probably have half a smile because everyone always says that it's easy to talk about it, but difficult to implement. And in the UK, above all, the UK is not very known for its praise culture either. In fact, it's very much a culture like Europe that is very apprehensive to give praise to one another. And again, the States tends to get a bad rap for always being so overly praising and not meaning anything. But I found a report and it surprised me. It's a UK survey that was done by an OC report back in 2023. And a large percentage of professionals rarely felt that any praise that was given to them had any value. So again, when I think about all of that, I also think about why and understand why people burn out and get exhausted. When you're not feeling heard, when you're not feeling seen, it all goes back there's an invisible strand about how are you being praised and how are you being criticized. So all of this is muddling in my head this whole month. And I happen to have two amazing guests on my podcast, Marjorie and Gustavo, and they spoke about taking the chance and following their heart, doing their own thing, but finding that inner strength to get to where they are. And when it came down to always sharing, and I do that with my other guests and tell them what I see in them and admire of them to where they are today, many of them are very shy. They don't know how to receive that praise and accept it. And it goes back to that we've always seen praise with this sense of it's not good to get it. So I asked myself, well, is it any wonder why we don't feel value or feel worthy, and that we're actually creating our own suffering along the way? And of course, all the Buddhists would probably start nodding their head. And so I've been reading this book by Blake Bauer, and the book is called, You Were Not Born to Suffer. And one of the chapters is about healthy selfish. And when I think about healthy selfish and praise, they complement each other. You see, if you take the praise on, at least I was seen in my culture, if you take the praise, you accept it, you're not allowed to let it go to your head, because otherwise you're going to get egocentrical. And having a big ego is what they consider selfish. So how do I navigate the attitude around praise? You see, if I felt, especially during the time, even though I had a lot of success in my life, I was at my lowest end. I felt very suicidal. And it's because I didn't feel worthy. No one ever told me that The more successful you are, the more people are going to criticize you, especially people who have not been in that position. And now, when I look back and I understand it, it was a very lonely journey, but also there was no one around me to remind me and motivate me. And that comes through praise. And it's not a selfish thing to have it. So, in order to navigate my attitude now with praise, I need that to fuel me to take the next step, to be motivated to take a risk. And sometimes when we're communicating with others, because we're so caught up with our own judgments on ourselves, we don't give praise so easily to others. And for me, I thought of it differently. I always remember hearing, treat people how you want others to treat you. And because I always felt criticized, I wish somebody would give me praise and tell me, hey, I see what you're doing and well done. And sometimes you do need that. You do need that praise as a reminder to let you know that all the things you're doing is not in vain. There is a value to it, and your time and effort does make a difference. And living in a world that we're so noisy and we're so afraid to tell one another or speak to one another in case we're stepping on each other's toes, we don't believe in each other anymore. And so we either sing false praise or we don't know how to give feedback. We struggle a lot with our communication. So I'm not surprised we burn out. And we're burning out because we're overthinking things. And I'm certainly been an overthinker. And so how do you get into a healthier relationship with praise? So going back, Blake Bauer, in the chapter of Healthy Selfish, he spoke about this. He reflected on there are moments where you got to acknowledge what is healthy for you, what is good for you. Acknowledging yourself is a good thing. I have a friend, as I'm sharing this, a friend comes to mind who always felt like wanting to help people. But the reason he was helping a lot of people is because he was actually seeking praise. He wanted to feel like the savior, and he wanted to hear the thank yous and, oh, you've done that. And then when he would get that, he would then diminish it right away and sabotage it. So he's not the only one. I've seen that being done so often, that we're longing for praise, but then when we receive it, we don't know what to do with it. And so my suggestion on that one is, and what I've come to understand over time is when you receive praise, just say thank you and get accustomed or practice not adding more afterwards. Don't add more to the thank you. Just allow yourself to sit, pause, and simmer in it. And initially, yes, you are going to feel uncomfortable, because the reason I give this suggestion is because when we say thank you, then we go, oh, and da-da-da. It's a form of diminishing it. It's a form of playing it down, because we're worried about how we're going to be seen if we do just say thank you. So I did 30 days on this to practice it. Whenever somebody did praise me, I would say thank you, and I will take it. I was at an event recently, and somebody goes, well, oh, aren't you bossy? Because I put one of my boundaries down. And I took that as a compliment, and I went, thank you. And I didn't offer anything in return. Because if you keep playing it down, you are actually not being true to yourself. If you want to feel praise and you want to accept praise, but you don't want to be overly boastful about it, my suggestion is build that healthy relationship with it. Know that when you are receiving it and why you're receiving it. Do you believe in it? And if you don't believe in it, why not? Introspective is probably one of the biggest skills we could have in today's noisiest world, and applying it with something as such as a praise can make all the difference. because our mental health is not just about fixing our past, because we can't fix the past. What we can do is understand it just a little bit better. And and the way we can do that is by understanding why we struggle with receiving praise. So when we introspect on it and we understand it, then we have change. Then we have the possibility to change. And I know when they say change is hard, it actually doesn't have to be hard. The key is with introspection is about slowing yourself down from the inside. Anyway, that's my thought for this month. I hope it gave you something to think about while you're on your walk or having your cup of coffee. And thank you for listening and tuning in. I always appreciate when someone tells me that they are listening to they get value from it. And if you have any insights or thoughts and you want to share or you want me to share something, I'm always open to it. So be sure to subscribe and follow along. Join the community. If you didn't know, I do have a Substack community starting up where I share a little bit more and expand it if you're a bit of a reader. I know when I have my cup of coffee, I love to read. Until the next episode, take care.